Friends, the topic for today is the history of Indian legislature. Let me first tell you about the nature of the companies that came to India during uh, this period and what was their motive behind coming to India. So, in 1600, the English East India Company obtained the royal charter from the British Crown that facilitated it exclusive rights, or I should say the trading rights, exclusive trading rights to trade in the East. The obtaining the royal charter meant that the English East India Company was it practiced monopoly in trade in this region, and no other English company was allowed to trade in this region. The Royal Charter, although has provided monopoly to the East India Company, the English East India Company, but it could not restrict other European companies to come to this region for trade. So before English East India Company could reach India, many other European countries companies have also uh, already reached, such as the Portuguese have had reached before English uh, company could have reached India, and then there were other competitors also, such as the Dutch and the French. These European companies were basically driven by commercial interest. They had come here to make profit. In those days, the Indian silk and the spices were in great demand. So these European companies came to the region and so as to buy the Indian commodities cheap and sell them there so as to make a profit. In addition to this, as there were many competitors in India, so it led to increase in price of the Indian commodities. So the first and the foremost uh, thing that the companies realize that they have to eliminate their contenders first. So all this led to struggle between among the companies and the Indian powers that were prevailing in those times, and that led to uh, drain of wealth and increase in debt of the company. So I've told you this so as to make an uh, form an idea about the company's uh, rule in India. What is the nature of the company's rule in India? It was primarily driven by commercial interest. It it was it does uh, it did not concern about uh, the interest of the Indian people. It was driven by profit, and it did as much as it could so as to extract maximum amount of profit from this region. So we'll be studying this topic under three heads. That is before 1773, 1773 to 1857, and 1858 onwards. Here we can see how the role of company changed during these uh, periods. Before 1773, company had full control over the administrative and other aspects of India. In between 1773 to 1857, there was partial control, and from 1858 onwards, the company ceased to exercise any control over the Indian governance of India. Then comes the Crown. Initially, after granting the Royal Charter in 1600, the British Crown or the government did not interfere into the working of the company till 1773. So there was no control of the Crown before 1773. Between 1773 to 1857, there was partial control, and after 1858, there was full control. Now comes the colony that is India. So here we have three C's: the company, the crown, and the colony. No control before 1773. Not much between 1773 to 1857, and you can see 1858 onwards there was little control of Indians. However, that was negligible as that was due to the attempts of our nationalist leaders who tried to increase the participation of Indians in the governance of India by influencing the policies of the British in that direction. So here it is clear that gradually the crown took over the reins of India from the company. At first, the company had full control, and then it ceased to have any control over India after 1858. Whereas the crown, uh, it had no control before 1773, and it uh, took over the reins of India and practiced full control over the Indian governance from 1858 onwards. Why this is why the crown had to do uh, had to take over the control of India? This is the first question that should come into our mind because there were many reasons. First of all, the expansionist policy of the company in order to increase profit. Then the indifferent attitude of the company towards the people of India. They were indifferent towards the miseries that the Indian people were facing in those times. However, the British Crown also did not significantly care about the feelings or the miseries of Indian people, but still uh, this was the this was one of the reasons why British Crown interfered into affairs of India because the company was indifferent towards the sentiments and the miseries that were faced by the Indian people. Then there was various other factors that led the British government to interfere in the affairs of India and to enact regulating act. So the year 1773 is the year of enactment of the regulating act. It marks the enactment of regulating act. That's why I've chosen uh, the year 1773. So let us first discuss the features of the Regulating Act. I have tried to consolidate all features with the help of graphics that is visible on your screen. The left side of the graphic is signifies the changes that were made in England, and the right side denotes the changes that were made in India. First of all, let us see the factors that led to the enactment of Regulating Act. The factors the factors that led to the enactment of a Regulating Act were: first factor was rampant corruption among companies officials. There was rampant corruption in the company. Then company was under huge debt. In order to carry out the trading activities in India, the company had to pay a certain sum of money to the British Parliament. But due to the local conditions prevailing during that time, the company uh, came under huge debt, and it was under obligation to pay a huge sum of money to the British Parliament, but it was not in a position to pay that. This was caused due to the famine that hit Bengal during that time. It led to the decrease in the revenue of the company. Next, there was also huge competition among the various European companies, which led to the decrease in profits of the company. And uh, in addition to this, the war waged by the company against Indian rulers and other European companies also led to the increase in debt of the company. So this was the second reason. Third reason was the confusion created due to the dual government introduced by Robert Clive. In dual government, both Nawab and the company had overlapping roles. The Nawab exercised the Nizamat rights. The Nizamat rights means the police and the judicial rights, and the company exercised the Diwani rights. Diwani rights means right to collect revenue. So this was the dual government that prevailed during that time. So it 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 was seen that sometimes the company uh, extended its sphere, its role, and came to the um Nawab side of powers, and it used to execute the uh, activities that was to be exercised by the Nawab. And one side the other way. So they had overlapping roles. Next uh, factor was the lawlessness that was prevailing in Bengal during that time. Due to this dual government and due to the company's indifferent attitude, uh, there was rampant lawlessness in the Bengal because neither the Nawab nor the company uh, they cared about the people of India. Next factor is the company's defeat at the hands of Hyder Ali. This was also one of the major factors that led to the enactment of Regulating Act by the British government. So let us discuss the features of the Regulating Act. Now let us first discuss the what changes were made on the England side of governance. A court of directors was appointed to look after the political matters. This court of directors consisted of 24 members elected among the shareholders of the company for 4 years. So the government exercised control through the court of directors and looked after the political matters of governance in India. Now, on the Indian side, the changes that were made were a Supreme Council of Bengal was constituted, and the Governor of Bengal came to be known as Governor General of Bengal. Initially, the British territories used to have three independent presidencies, that is the Madras, Bombay, and Bengal. But by the enactment of this act, the powers of uh, presidency of Bombay and Madras was abolished, and they were made subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. In addition to this, and in order to assist the Governor General, and a Governor General Executive Council was appointed, which consisted of four executive members, and uh, including the Governor General, there were five members in the council. So this was the Regulating Act that was enacted in 1773. Here are some of the features that are summarized in the slides. In this slide, so it was basically enacted to regulate the affairs of the company. It was introduced by the then PM Lord North in 1773. It distinguished the political functions and the administrative functions. The political functions were looked after by the court of directors, and the administrative function were looked after by Governor General of Bengal. So it was an attempt at the start of establishment of centralized administration of India. Another important fact about this act was it led to the establishment of Supreme Court in Calcutta. Sir Elijah MP was appointed as its first judge. But the thing is, although Supreme Court was established due to this act, no specific powers were uh, mentioned that the Supreme Court could exercise. So often there were situations in which the Supreme Court jurisdiction and the Governor General's jurisdiction came into conflict with each other. So we can say that the Supreme Court was not independent. So these were the features of the Regulating Act 1773. Next act that was enacted was the Pitt's India Act 1784. Now here from the graphics we can see that there were changes made both on the Indian as well as the England side of the governance. In addition to the Court of Directors, a six-member Board of Control that consisted of personnel from the British government was uh, appointed. So there was dual control. The commercial matters were being looked after by the Court of Directors, and the political matters came to be looked after by the Board of Control. So there was dual control on the England side of governance. Then let's see what happened to the to the Indian side of governance. The Supreme Council of Bengal uh, was that was constituted consisted of Governor General of Bengal and the governors of Bombay and Madras reported to Governor General of Bengal. However, this arrangement was made so as to make the governors of Bengal and Madras subordinate to Governor General of Bengal, but it was not uh, exercised by them. They It was merely a theoretical concept. It was not seen in practical terms. The Governor General Executive Council now consisted of three members. One member uh, was reduced, so it consisted of three members, including the Governor General. There were four members in the Executive Council. So this was the Fix India Act 1784. Now the British, first of all, the initially the territories occupied by the company were called as company's territories, but now onwards they are uh, called as British possessions. For the first time, the territories were called as British possessions after the enactment of this act. Thereafter, Charter Act 1833 was enacted. So, as we can see from the graphics, there was no change on the English side of governance, but on Indian side, few changes were introduced. That the Governor General of Bengal came to be, it was redesignated as Governor General of India. The Governor General Executive Council again consisted of four members, but the difference was that it consisted of three executive members and one law member. Lord Macaulay was the first law member. The uh, basic logic behind this is that the law member will only be present, would only be present in the meetings that involved legislative matters, and other meetings were uh, attended by the executive members. So, all in all, there were five members, three executive member, one law member, and one Governor General of India. So this was the Supreme Council of Bengal now came to be called as Council of India, and the territories occupied by the company were called as British possession. These are the some features of the Charter Act. So the Governor General of Bengal was redesignated as Governor General of India. Sir William Bentinck became the first Governor General of India. Now, the company was reduced to an administrative body. It had no commercial powers because the commercial powers were exercised through the board, through the court of director by the British government, and it was reduced to a merely administrative body. The company was reduced to a merely administrative body. Then the legislative power of Bengal and Madras were abolished, and the Governor General of India was uh, given exclusive power over India. Now, the all the regulations that were enacted after this act came to be called as acts, and previously they were called as regulations. These were the features of the Charter Act 1833. After the enactment of Charter Act 1833, the next act, Charter Act of 1853, was enacted. Again, there was no change in the English side of governance. The commercial matters were looked after by the Court of Directors, and the political matters were looked after the Board of Control. But on the side of Indian governance, there were significant changes that were introduced. The Council of India consisted of Governor General of India and there was an Executive Council, and the Executive Council consisted of four members plus six legislative councillors and one commander in chief. So, in addition to the four members, six legislative councillors and one commander in chief uh, were, was, were appointed to the Governor General Executive Council. These six legislative councillors, among them were one Chief Justice of Supreme Court of Calcutta, one Judge of Supreme Court of Calcutta, and four ICS members, that is Indian Civil Service members from the provinces of Madras, Bengal, Bombay, and Agra. This legislative council, the body of six legislative councillors, came to be called as Governor General Legislative Council or the Imperial Legislative Council. So, all in all, there were 12 members, four, uh, three executive members, one law member, one Governor General, six legislative councillors, and one Commander in Chief. These are the features of the Charter Act 1853. It separated the executive and legislative function of Governor General's Council. It introduced an open system for appointment to civil services. The civil services in those times consisted of two uh, types of services. First, it the covenanted civil service or the higher civil service and the non-covenanted civil service or the lower civil service. The higher civil service was the officials of higher civil service were appointed by means of competition, and the officials of the lower civil service were appointed otherwise. So accordingly, Macaulay Committee was constituted for civil services in 1854. So that's all about the Charter Act of 1853. Uh, so here we can see that gradually the British uh, government is increasing its influence over the activities of uh, the company, and it continued. This trend is continued was continued till 1858 when the British government completely took over the reins of India from the company. So that's all for today. Thank you.